What up, telefolk? It's Molly from Cascade Telemark here. Just bringing you a brand new video focused on Telemark specific training. Being a certified personal trainer and with Brian and I's 10 years of Telemark experience together, we have worked on a pre-season training workout. I am happy to introduce that this is coming out in cycles. I hope that you follow us along. Today's specific video will be highlighting weeks 1 and 2. So make sure you're subscribed, make sure you follow along so that we can keep getting through this training program together. The way this is gonna work is it's a 6 to 8 week optional program. Today in our video is going to be day 1, day 2, day 3 with an optional day 4. All of these days are going to be repeated for week 2. So we'll put timestamps down below. If you're following along with this video, feel free to come back. Make sure that you're doing the right things for the right day. Weeks 1 and 2 that we're gonna start today is working on foundational leg strength, core strength, stability, and moving through different planes of motion. What's really important with telemark skiing is being able to move effectively, not just forwards and backwards, side to side, but also rotationally as we're moving down the hill. We've made a good effort to make sure that this program is accessible for everyone, whatever level you're at. Starting off with body weight movements where you can add resistance as you'd like. Before we get started with any of our days, I just want to run you through a quick little dynamic warm-up. This can be used for any of the days here on our training program. Great things to start with could be a little walk, 5 minutes on the treadmill, row machine, whatever type of cardio you like, just to get those body tissues warm, the blood flowing, so we can prevent injury. Let's assume that I've walked a little bit on the treadmill. The next things I want to do just to dynamically warm myself up might include a couple of these back and forth movements. Things I'm going to start with might be some hip openers. Really just working on mobilizing that hip joint. Some people call these open and closed gates. We'll do some closed gates back. I'm also working a little bit on keeping my core aware so I'm not falling over. Hamstring scoops. Warming up the hamstrings, working on that hinge at the hips. Kicks. Doesn't matter how high you're going. We're just getting some blood flow going. Don't strain yourself. You can do some butt kicks. If you want to add a hop to any of these, you're welcome to. We can do some high knees. Do some calf walking raises on my toes. And I will walk back on my heels, looking like a little duck. That's okay. The point of this is just to get our tissues warm, prepped for that movement. Feel free to expand the space that you're doing this in. Get a good warm up for at least 5 minutes before you start this exercise program. All right, welcome to day 1, exercise 1. So first we're gonna be starting off with reverse lunges with a rotation. So what that's gonna look like is we're gonna take one foot and we're gonna have one in the front. We're gonna shoot back our other leg into a lunge. I'm really trying to keep my core tight. I'm not letting my pelvis flare out in the back. Keeping my pelvis tucked underneath me, my core is tight, and I'm lunging down. That's almost gonna recreate our tele stance here. I wanna add a rotation, however. So whatever leg's in front, that leg's going back, and we're twisting over that side. So for this exercise, we're gonna be doing 3 sets of 12 per leg. So it's gonna look a little bit like this with no extra modifications. That's 1. 2. 3, the other side will do exactly the same, but opposite. So if left leg's going back, right leg's in front, we're lunging and rotating over the right side. This is kind of mimicking a telemark stance a bit. We have some give, and we're working on rotation, which is gonna be helpful for when we're trying to keep our shoulders pointing downhill. If we want to progress this in any way, we can add resistance throughout that rotation. So here I just have a little resistance band hooked up to the side of the stairwell. All I'm gonna be doing is the same kind of rotation. I'm twisting over my left, and this resistance band is pulling me that way, and I have to resist that force. It's really gonna help engage that core, and it's really gonna help with the strains while we're on the mountain. You could also, if you have access to a med ball or a sandbag or things like that, you can twist and do a med ball slam and catch it. Again, we're doing this for 3 sets of 12 on each side, and we're off to exercise 2. For our second exercise, we're going to be doing single leg glute bridges. Let's take up one leg to the sky, and we're only going to be driving through our left heel. We can have our hands down for support here. If this is too easy, elevate that bottom foot or add resistance onto your pelvis here. Let's do 3 sets of 10 on each side, really focusing on that glute and hip extension. Driving through the heel will help you to feel that engagement in your glutes. Now, if we want to modify this into double leg glute bridges, that's completely fine. Setting up for this, if we're doing that modified double leg glute bridge, we're going to start with our heels on the ground with about a 45-degree angle on our legs, and we're going to be pushing our hips straight up to the ceiling. And that's 1 rep. For our third exercise today, we're going to be doing side planks. Let's do 3 sets of 30 seconds on each side. What this is going to look like is we're going to have our shoulder stacked over our elbow, legs out straight. If we want to modify to our knees, that's totally fine. We're going to be holding this side position for 30 seconds. If we need something more, add a knee drive. It can be dynamic for 30 seconds on each side. Really hold to activate that core. This is going to help with some of those oblique side strength, so when we're twisting, we have the power and control to be able to do that. Let's switch over to the other side so we can see what that looks like. Again, I'm stacking my shoulder over my elbow, keeping my hand out for support. I'm either driving up, making a nice straight line with my body from my knees, or I'm setting up for a full plank from my feet, holding for 30 seconds. After that 30 seconds, switch. Do it 3 times, 30 seconds each side. Now we're at exercise 4 of day 1. It's going to be step ups with a knee drive. So find any kind of staircase or a box you might have at a gym. All we're doing is stepping forward with 1 foot and driving our knee up the other. I like to have a little bit of pause at the top, work on that stability when we're using power to help hold our core and hold us to stop that movement. That's going to help build strength and build core awareness. So we want to step up, drive, step down. I'm going to switch legs, drive up, down, switch legs. I'm going to alternate sides, do 3 sets of 10 on each side. So if you're counting just 1 set, you can do 20. So 1, switch, 2. You can increase the difficulty with this by finding a higher step, performing it on an unstable surface. Maybe you have a bench with a little bit of padding. Just make sure that you're staying within your range of limitations and not going to injure yourself. You can also step sideways to focus on different types of force. So that wraps up exercise 4. Make sure we're doing this for 3 sets of 10 on each leg. So if we're doing 1 set, that's 20 total. Great job completing your first day of our Telemark specific exercise course. Make sure you save this video so you can come back tomorrow, follow along for day 2. Here we are at day 2. Let's start fresh with our first exercise with a lateral lunge with a reach across. So I want to set up on the side of my mat. I'm going to be working on my right leg first. It's going to come out wider than hip distance. So we're kind of going to fall. I don't want to be doing the splits here, but we're flying that foot out a little bit, keeping my knees over my toes, and I'm lunging into that side, keeping that other leg straight. What we're going to do here is then add a twist where we're reaching towards our foot, pushing through our bent knee to drive back up to standing. That's 1 completed rep. We're going to do 3 sets of 10 on each side. So a couple at full tempo will look like this. If we want to add a little bit of difficulty here, we'd be holding a weight, or we can focus on a knee drive at the end and hold for some stability. I'd recommend that option to start out if you're not comfortable with weights yet. As you can see, my body had to adjust to go against that opposing force I was putting on it, which is really going to be helpful for hip stability and things going down the chain. Again, with that knee drive. Arms can kind of be wherever is comfortable for you. And that's our first exercise of the day. Let's hit number 2. For exercise number 2, we're going to be doing some bear crawls with shoulder taps. Now, getting into that bear crawl stance, I'm having wide fingertips going straight down in line with my shoulders. I'm going to lift up onto my toes. And if this is enough of a bear plank for you, stay here. Great. If you feel like you want a little bit more, let's add those shoulder taps in, where I'm shifting my weight and trying not to rotate as much as possible. That's gonna put you off balance, which is gonna make that core activate. Adding in the crawl part, I'm stepping forward. If we get to the end of the mat like I am here, we can start going backwards. I want you to focus more on those shoulder taps because that'll put you off balance. We're gonna do that for 3 sets of 30 seconds. So pull out a timer. I'm gonna demonstrate where I'm not crawling here just because I have limited space. If we have a big, nice, long hallway, perfect. Go ahead and give it a crawl. This is what a rep will look like. We're just tapping our shoulders. If we want a little extra without the crawl, pick up that opposite foot. Off to exercise 3 is gonna be our supine heel slides. This is really gonna be targeting those hamstrings. We're gonna work on slow eccentric control, really building strength throughout that hamstring, which is gonna be super important for when we're learning to telemark going through those lunges. Here I have just one little slider with me. You can use a paper plate on a hardwood floor, or a towel on a hardwood floor as well, or carpet. Anything that will slide really well, even some fuzzy socks might work. So the way that we're gonna set this up is to get laying down in kind of our bridge position to start. This doesn't slide too well on my mat, so I'm gonna use the grass. Just use what you have. So I'm gonna put that under one heel. If I had 2 sliders, I could do this double leg. That'll make it a little bit more challenging since we won't have that other side to stabilize. Laying down, my starting position will start in a glute bridge. So I'm keeping my right leg bent since the left foot has the slider under it, and I'm sliding out that foot, trying to keep my low back from really straining like this with my hips. So I'm keeping my pants zipped up with that pelvis tilt here, keeping my core really tight. Once I get to that bottom, I will lower down, pull that back in, reset for my second rep. We're gonna do 3 sets of 10 on each side. So after I've gotten 10, I would switch this to put it under my right heel. Again, you can do these double leg, putting your heels on some sliders, doing it both at the same time, but that's gonna be a little bit more work for those hamstrings since you don't have that kickstand of a leg. All right, for our last exercise of day 2, we have some standing skater jumps with a pause. Skater jumps are a great way to replicate a little bit more of that dynamic, plyometric impact feeling of skiing while being off the snow. So our starting position, we're gonna start on one side of our mat. We're gonna hop, landing on one foot, balancing. This is gonna work that core in a way similar to our lateral lunges earlier. We're gonna have to oppose that force, but it's much more dynamic. We're switching back and forth with a pause. That back leg gets kind of tucked behind you. That's what that movement's gonna look like starting at baseline, 3 sets of 10 jumps per side. If we wanna modify this so there's a little less impact, I just want you to transfer that weight. I don't need a big hop, I don't need a big jump. Maybe dramatize that pause. Things where we don't need to be pushing and jumping could be a good modification for this one. If you're getting real crazy adding weight, then that's a great progression for this one too. But overall, we're just getting our heart rate up. We're working on that dynamic stability and increasing that impact on our joints a little bit. Great job completing day 2. Make sure you save this video. We'll have the timestamps down below so you can start it right up tomorrow for day 3. Welcome to day 3. We're gonna start our first exercise out strong with a little bit of leg activation. We're gonna be doing some wall sits here. Find any kind of wall that you have available to you. For this one, we don't need too much equipment, which is great. I wanna think when I'm starting out, I do have a little bit of a lip here, so I'm trying to try not to cheat and sit on it. But when we're sitting down here, my low back is pressed firmly against that wall, and I'm trying to get my legs as close to 90 degrees as possible. I'm gonna be holding this movement for 30 seconds to 45 seconds, depending on your strength. And if we need a little bit more of a challenge, we can add a rotation. Again, we're doing 3 sets of 30 seconds. Now we're moving into day 3, exercise 2, which are our Bulgarian split squats. We're starting off body weight just so we get that movement down. I want you to find a step, or if you have a little bit of a higher box, that's okay too. I'm gonna demonstrate here on this staircase. So with a Bulgarian split squat, we wanna think about being a couple feet away from that step, and we're gonna put up one foot onto an elevated surface. So see how that back foot is popped? That's great. Another way I like to set this up is if I'm sitting on that foot, if that's comfortable for you, wherever that front leg lays is where I'm gonna put it. So with a Bulgarian split squat, we're gonna be starting in this position. Again, make sure that pelvis is tucked. We're gonna be lowering down. Our knee doesn't have to touch. We're just working on getting this leg activated. So just a reminder, we're doing 3 sets of 10 on each side. Now I want to talk a little bit here about positioning. If we hinge our hips and we go down, our glute's going to get a bigger stretch, which means more strength is going to be used from that glute. If we're more upright and our pelvis is a little bit more tucked, we're going to use a lot more quad strength. Both movements are correct, just going to give you a different stretch on each muscle, and it's going to require a little bit different from the body parts, but we want both for telemark skiing to help push ourselves out of that turn and also use our quads to drive forward. And a full rep will look like this. Again, I'm keeping my pelvis tucked, and here I have a little bit more of a forward bend with a neutral spine. Ways that we could increase this if this is feeling really, really easy for you is by adding weights or putting that foot up on a little bit of a higher step. So we want 3 sets each side. So we'll switch sides every 10 rep. Make sure you're giving yourself adequate breaks. As you can tell, I'm already out of breath. On to exercise 3, we'll be doing some squat jumps. If we want to do a modification for this exercise, I just want to do some body weight squats. So let's start out with our squat form. What I really want to focus on is keeping my spine neutral. Again, I'm not flaring my pelvis, making a really dramatized back arch. That's going to give us low back pain, and that's not going to help us on the hill because what's falling out, our abdomen, our core is not tight. That's not going to be helpful. So really keep that core engaged, almost tilting that pelvis. We're almost tilting that pelvis a little bit, and I'm just going to lower down into this squat, come back up. For this modified version, I want to do 3 sets of 8 to 10 reps, whatever's feeling appropriate for you at that time. This is going to be building leg strength, glute strength, a whole lower body strength that's really going to be foundational for our telemark skiing. Now, the squat jump comes in where we go to the bottom and we explode up and land softly. We'll go straight into our next rep. The squat jump doesn't have to be super, super high. It's just about increasing the power that we're putting through our legs, which is going to increase the strength in our legs over time. So we'll do 3 sets of 8 to 10 with that jump. And just to be clear here, it's either you're doing the modification of the standing body weight squats or you're adding that jump. That's not 2 separate exercises. This is just a modification for that exercise. For our last exercise, we're going to be doing calf raises on a step. So find a step at home and position the balls of your feet to be on the step with your heels kind of hanging off. If this doesn't feel good, you can start on the ground and we'll just raise up like this. But if we have that extra stretch, that can be helpful for building strength and increasing the load on our tendons, our Achilles tendons, which we want to get strong and ready to handle, quick movements inside of our boots. So the rep looks like this. We're going to start in our bottom position. We're going to slowly raise up and then really focus on that going down. This eccentric part of the lift is where we're going to get the most amount of strength. So I like this tempo to be about 6 to 8 seconds here. We're going to do 3 sets of 12 for this whole exercise. And if it's not feeling difficult enough, we can always do single leg. But I'd recommend let's start with a double leg, okay? And remember, we can always do this on the ground. And I'm not looking for it to be a stability challenge here. Don't feel like you need to do it hands off. Let's hold on to something while we get used to this motion. All done with day 3. If we're choosing to stop there for the week, that's great. Let's keep moving on. If you want to choose day 4 tomorrow or whenever it fits into your schedule, save this video, we'll get started. All right, welcome to day 4. This is our optional day if we want a little bit more training in our week. Day 4 is going to be working a little bit more on our cardiovascular endurance with still some of those ski-specific movements. Exercise 1 will include a high knee with an arm drive. We can modify this exercise by doing it in place like this. I'm shifting my weight from side to side, alternating knees, and I'm having the opposite knee to arm raised. We're gonna do 3 sets of 30 seconds of this exercise. So if we're doing this modified, we're marching in place like this. If we're doing this with that high knee aspect, we're hopping a little bit. Since this is a timed exercise, you'll have to pull out that timer, but we're gonna do that for 3 sets of 30 seconds, get our heart rate warmed up, and help with that opposing transitional weight shift that will be essential for once we get on our skis. For our second exercise today, we're gonna be doing some mountain climbers with an alternating knee drive. The way that's gonna work is we're gonna be on all fours, our hands are gonna be out like this, and our opposite knee is gonna come to meet our opposite hand. So setting up for this, almost like I'm setting up for that bear plank again. I'm bringing it up, but my feet are actually gonna be all the way out into a full tabletop plank position. 1 rep will involve my right knee coming into my left elbow, switching left knee into right elbow. A modified version of this is to do it without jumping. We're gonna complete 3 sets of 30 seconds of this exercise. And if we want a little bit of progression from that non-impact, non-jumping version, it'll look a little something like this. Just adding a little bit more hop and speed to the movement. All right, so going on with exercise 3, we're gonna be doing a squat to calf raise with a reach. The way I wanna set this up is just like how we were doing our body weight squats yesterday. Hips, or our feet are hip width apart. We're squatting down, and when we get to that top, instead of jumping like we did yesterday, we're gonna be raising up onto a calf raise and extending our arms into an overhead reach. So again, together, and I'm almost pausing at the top here. I'm holding, having to brace my core, working on not falling over, things like that, increasing that leg strength through our squats. We're gonna be doing 3 sets of 10. Let's move on to exercise 4. Our last exercise for day 4 includes a little bit more strength with some ski-specific intention. We're gonna be doing a walking lunge with a slower tempo, really focusing on how we're dropping our knee down and slowly coming back up. One of the things that Brian and I have been working on in our Telemark skiing is working on our progressive knee drop. This is gonna be able to recreate that a little bit through our training season, something to think about as we're moving along throughout this program. When we're lunging in this position, I really want us to think about being in control of the whole motion. I'm not just gonna flap my knee down like that. I really want us to focus on, if we're stepping out, we're slowly coming down, slowly raising back up. And when I'm doing that, I'm pushing through my front heel. You're gonna feel a little bit of that glute activation that we felt throughout some of those single leg glute bridges. And we're gonna be focusing on our quad strength, pushing up from our back. So standing in place, it's gonna look a little something like this. Slow on the way down, slow on the way back up. Now I want us to put it all together. Let's walk a couple steps, find a space in your house, wherever gym where you're doing this. We're just gonna go down back for 3 sets. For this, it's most helpful for me to just find a hallway or a long section of the gym to do these walking lunges. I like to do about 10 on my way down, 10 on my way back, so about 20 total. I'm really focusing on that tempo. It's not as much on the quantity of how many actual lunges you're doing. You're going to be feeling that muscle engagement once you slow down and control the movement. Done with our optional day 4. Great job for completing week 1 of our Telemark specific course. Make sure you keep this video, save it for the next week. We'll do it together again for week 2. We'll be posting a video shortly for weeks 3 and 4. Weeks 3 and 4 will start increasing that intensity, adding a little bit more resistance and complex movement patterns to increase that foundational strength that we've built throughout weeks 1 and 2. Weeks 5 and 6 will be specifically more on building power and speed throughout our movements. We will be increasing some weight and intensity in the exercises, but I really want to focus on increasing that power and ability to transition quickly between turns. Let's say we're on a mogul or steep run. I want you to be able to have the power and efficiency through your muscles to be able to quickly change turns, do the stuff that you want to do, and prevent injury in those more tight space difficult places to navigate while you're on Telemark skis. Week 7 and 8 will be a little bit more optional if you want to. It'll include more athletic drills, heavier load, increased rotational movements, and things like that to get us ready for the slopes. We'll be on this journey together. My hope is just to get people moving, working through those different planes of motion, and get us a little bit stronger to start out on a better foot for our season this year. Stay tuned for our next video for weeks 3 and 4. We'll see you guys shortly. Excited to see you on the slopes. Let's get strong, let's get ready, let's have fun.